You're always on alert, even when everything is fine. Some people don't walk into a room. They scan it. They don't need someone to say they're upset. They notice it in the way a glass was placed on the table, in a reply that is 2 words shorter than usual, in that tiny pause before someone answers. Maybe this happens to you. Someone says, "I'm fine," and while another person would simply hear, "I'm fine," your mind starts working. Why did they say it like that? Are they upset? Did I do something? Should I ask? Would it be better to say nothing? And 5 minutes later, you're trying to solve a problem that might not even exist. The strange thing is, you probably wouldn't describe yourself as distracted. Quite the opposite. You notice tones of voice, silences, small gestures other people seem to miss. You may even feel a little proud of that ability. I notice things other people don't, and that may be completely true. But there is a much more important question. How much does noticing everything cost you? Because there is a huge difference between being observant and feeling like you have to observe in order to feel safe. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. What happens when your emotional radar stays switched on even when there is no clear threat? Why tiny changes can start to feel like urgent information? And most importantly, how you can begin teaching your mind that not every change means something bad is about to happen. If you want to understand not only what you do, but why your mind learned to do it, subscribe to Universo Interior. Because sometimes understanding yourself begins with realizing that certain things you called my personality may also be patterns you learned over time. Imagine this. You're talking to someone you care about. Everything seems normal. Then they look at their phone. Nothing unusual. They have probably looked at their phone hundreds of times while sitting next to you. But this time, you notice something. Their expression changed, barely. Maybe you couldn't even explain exactly what you saw, but you felt it. Your attention locks onto them. Now you are listening less to the conversation and watching the person more. Are they distant? Did they answer differently? Are they avoiding eye contact? Did something happen? Your body begins to participate. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing shifts slightly. You feel that familiar pressure in your chest or stomach. And then something important happens. You are no longer looking for information in a completely neutral way. You are trying to find an explanation for the sense of danger that just appeared. And when a mind is searching for threat, it can find meaning almost anywhere. A short reply can feel like distance. A delay can feel like rejection. A serious face can feel like anger. A change of plans can feel like loss of interest. Silence can feel like a warning. Not because you are consciously making things up, and not because every instinct you have is wrong. Sometimes something really is happening. The problem begins when almost any uncertainty starts to feel like something you must solve immediately. This resembles what psychology often describes as hypervigilance, a state in which attention remains especially prepared to detect possible signs of threat. And something here matters. Hypervigilance is not simply thinking too much, and it is not a diagnosis you should give yourself after watching one video. It is a way of describing a pattern of attention and alertness that can appear in different situations. For some people, it can be connected with anxiety. For others, prolonged periods of stress. And it can also develop after difficult experiences or environments where paying close attention to changes around you was useful. There is no single story behind it. But the logic can feel something like this. Is there something here I need to notice before it becomes a problem? Imagine, just as a metaphor, 2 alarm systems. The first needs very clear evidence before it activates. The second is much more sensitive. It detects smoke, temperature changes, tiny shifts in the environment. That second system will produce more false alarms, but it will also remain constantly prepared to detect something early. Now imagine that sensitivity operating inside your relationships, inside your workplace, inside conversations, inside the way you interpret other people. It may help you notice social cues quickly, but it can also make you react emotionally to possibilities, not only to facts. And this is where one of the most exhausting parts begins. Resting does not necessarily mean your mind has stopped processing information. You can be sitting on the couch and still replaying a conversation. You can be out with friends while part of your attention keeps checking who looks uncomfortable. You can be in a calm relationship and wonder when it is going to change. You can receive a sweet message and analyze why it was written exactly that way. Your body can be somewhere safe while your attention keeps working like a night guard. It never completely ends its shift, and that takes energy, a lot of it. That is why some people reach the end of the day completely exhausted without understanding what they did to become so tired. Maybe there was no crisis. Maybe physically you did nothing extraordinary. But you spent hours interpreting expressions, anticipating conversations, reviewing decisions, and preparing responses for situations that may never happen. That is still work, mental work, invisible, but work nonetheless. And there is another consequence that can be even harder to notice. You can begin trusting the alarm more than the information you actually have. Think about it. During a conversation, you feel like someone is upset. Your body reacts. Anxiety appears, and then a thought follows. If I feel this way, there must be a reason. Suddenly, the feeling begins turning into evidence. I know something is wrong. Maybe something is. Maybe nothing is. But your body has already reacted before you finished investigating. That is where this pattern can begin affecting relationships. Because an ambiguous signal can create a very real reaction. You ask, "Are you okay?" They answer, "Yeah," but you still feel something, so you ask, "Are you sure?" Or maybe you do the exact opposite. You pull away first. You reply less. Your attitude changes. You start emotionally preparing yourself. Because part of you thinks, if something is changing, I would rather see it coming. And that creates a painful paradox. You try to detect distance in order to protect the relationship. But constant vigilance can end up creating distance inside that very relationship, because the other person is no longer interacting only with you. They are also interacting with all the possibilities your mind is trying to prevent. And this doesn't only happen in relationships. It can happen at work. Your boss sends you a message. "Can you come see me for a minute?" 6 words, nothing more. But before you even reach the office, you have mentally reviewed everything you did that week. Did I make a mistake? Did someone complain? Is this about what happened Tuesday? Am I getting fired? You walk in, and your boss simply wants to know if you can help with a project. The alarm was wrong. You feel relief, but notice something. Your mind does not necessarily conclude, "See, there was no danger." It may conclude something very different. Thankfully, nothing happened this time. And the pattern continues. Because reducing the power of a false alarm requires more than simply having nothing bad happen. You also have to begin recognizing that your original prediction was not a fact. And this is where the important part begins. Having a sensitive radar does not mean you need to switch it off. The goal is not to become naive. It is not to ignore real warning signs. It is not to convince yourself that everyone has good intentions. The goal is much smarter than that, to learn the difference between noticing a signal and automatically obeying the story your mind creates around it. Imagine another simple situation. You're sitting in a coffee shop with a friend. Normally, they talk a lot. Today, they are quieter. They look at their phone several times. Their answers are shorter, and the thought appears. They're uncomfortable with me. That thought can feel completely convincing. But try separating two things. What you know and what you are interpreting. What you know, they're talking less today. What you are interpreting, they're upset with me. The difference seems small. It isn't. The first sentence describes information. The second already tells a story. And between information and story, there is a small space. That space matters. Because now there are other possibilities. Your friend could be upset with you. Yes, but they could also be tired, worried about something, waiting for an important message, distracted, or simply having a quiet day. You do not have to choose an explanation immediately. You can allow reality to give you more information. And that brings us to another useful question. What am I trying to prevent right now? Not, what is happening, but what am I afraid will happen? In that coffee shop, you may realize something. You are not really trying to understand why your friend is talking less. You are trying to prevent the feeling that someone important is beginning to pull away. That realization changes the situation, because maybe you do not need to become a better detective. Maybe you need to learn how to remain inside uncertainty for a few minutes. That can be difficult, especially if anticipating problems has felt like protection for a very long time. But psychological safety does not mean knowing exactly what is going to happen. It also means building confidence that you will be able to respond when something actually does happen. That is why one simple sentence can help create a little space. I don't need to solve this signal yet. Not, I'm imagining everything. Not, nothing is wrong. Because maybe something is wrong. Just, I don't need to solve it yet. That word, yet, matters. It gives reality time to provide more information. And it keeps anxiety from immediately writing the rest of the story. Imagine that a few minutes later, your friend receives a phone call. They apologize. They tell you that a family member is dealing with something serious, and they have been waiting for news all afternoon. Suddenly, all those small signs that seemed to be about you had an explanation that had nothing to do with you. And maybe this time you can register something different. Not, good thing I was wrong. But, my first interpretation was not the only possibility. That is learning. You can also work with your attention. When you notice yourself becoming fixated on a person, a message, or a conversation, slowly widen the frame. If your attention is trapped on someone's expression, notice the rest of the room. If you are staring at your phone, feel your feet against the floor. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice objects that have no emotional meaning for you. You are not pretending you do not care. You are reminding your attention that the world contains more information than the thing that currently feels threatening. Because when we are on alert, the world can become very small. Everything disappears except whatever feels dangerous. And finally, there is an even deeper question. When was the last time you allowed something to be okay, without checking how long it would last? Because constantly watching for danger does not only make you suffer over problems that have not happened yet, it can also make it harder to remain inside the good moments that are happening right now. Something beautiful happens, and you begin thinking about how it might end. Someone loves you, and you search for signs of when that might change. You achieve something important, and immediately imagine how you could lose it. The present arrives, but part of your attention is already living inside the next possible threat. And maybe that is one of the quietest losses of living constantly on alert. You do not only suffer in advance, you can also miss part of what is already okay. Your radar probably exists for a reason. Maybe it helped you once. Maybe it still helps you in certain situations. Being perceptive is not a flaw. Noticing changes is not a flaw. Being emotionally sensitive is not a flaw either. The problem begins when every perception demands a reaction, when every change requires an immediate explanation, when every silence becomes an investigation, when any uncertainty begins to feel dangerous. You do not need to stop noticing. You need to learn that noticing something does not require you to act on it immediately. You can observe, you can wait, you can check, you can allow more information to appear. And you may discover that some signals really did mean something, while others were simply people who were tired, distracted, dealing with their own problems, or just having a different kind of day. Maybe for a long time, feeling safe meant detecting danger before everyone else. But there is another kind of safety, one that does not depend on predicting everything. The safety of knowing that even if you cannot anticipate every change, you can trust yourself to face it when it actually arrives. And then something strange happens. Your radar does not disappear. It is still part of you. You still observe. You still notice. You still pick up on details. But you no longer have to sit in front of that radar, waiting for a threat to appear. For the first time in a long time, you can look around and allow yourself to be there too, not watching life, living it.